get ready with me while I tell you why I decided to do a master's in healthcare administration. Okay, hi, if you're new here, my name is Allegra. As I mentioned, I am a second year master's student here in the United States, and I am also on the pre-med track. So a couple months ago, I made a video on my TikTok about the reasons why I chose to do healthcare administration. So I thought to myself, why not do a video for my YouTube channel while I'm getting ready to go to school? So today is the first day of classes, and I'm just gonna do a very quick makeup, really nothing crazy, so I can just be a little more presentable. My first day. This is not what I'm gonna be wearing. I'm just wearing this while I'm putting everything on. But I also wear something white, but that's okay. Anywho, so basically, what's a master's in healthcare administration? Let me ask Siri. Hey Siri, what's a master in healthcare administration?
Individuals with a master's in healthcare administration can have the following job titles: Chief Executive Officer, Chief Nursing Officer, Healthcare Consultant, Practice Manager, Program Manager, Facility Manager, and Nurse Manager. This answer is from nurse.org.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to where I come from. So I think I've mentioned on my channel multiple times that I was born and raised in Congo. Congo is located in Central Africa, and I spent my entire life there up until I was done with high school in 2018, and that's when I moved to the US, right? I was never someone that was interested in healthcare when I was in high school, at least starting out high school. I thought I was gonna go into law school because both of my parents are lawyers, and I kind of liked it. It wasn't a bad universe. It was something very familiar. You know, I could ask my parents about it, and they both seemed passionate about it. So I was like, yeah, that's not like some career to do. But also, when I started high school, I was also really into figuring out if I really wanted to go into law school. And as I was growing, I guess, I realized that I didn't really like it like that, even though in my high school, I studied at the Belgian school in Kinshasa. Kinshasa is the capital of DR Congo, right? And we did have really great classes to help you figure out what you wanted to do. And for a while, I was really leaning towards law school because of my parents, not because I wanted it. So after a couple months into high school, I realized I didn't really like law classes like that, like I thought I would. So what I did was, in my school, you had to choose between being on the economic side or the science side, or I forget the name, but there was another path that was not really econ or science, but that was something, in between. It wasn't really the decided majors, but So I chose to be on the econ side, right? Because in the midst of all these figuring out what I wanted to do, I knew for a fact that I was not gonna be a science girly. I was failing in all of my science classes. Not all. I was mostly failing in math and physics and chemistry. Y'all, I was doing well in biology, and I kind of liked it. But I liked it didn't mean I was seeing myself into a scientific path at all. I hated it. I would have almost every year up until the last 2 years of high school, I always had to repeat my math exams. It was, y'all, when I tell you, I hated it. So what happened was that I wasn't a science girly. I knew I wasn't gonna go into science or whatever. So I took econ. So my path was econ. So I was taking econ classes. And when you were in econ, at some point you had to choose if you were gonna take law classes. And I think I took law classes just to make sure that I didn't really like it and all that, which I didn't really. Yeah, so I took econ. At that time, I was thinking maybe instead of doing law school, I can maybe try something economics, maybe I will like it more. I tried looking into that, but even my econ classes, I was doing well in those. It wasn't like, I like it, you know? It wasn't giving that. It was like, yeah, I tolerate it, but I don't like it like that. So, and again, I hated math. And then at that time period, I also thought that I would go study in Belgium. So that's the thing. Congo was colonized by Belgium. So most of us usually in Congo, when we think about going abroad, most of us think about Europe. And at some point in my life, I thought I was gonna go to Europe. So even in my classes, I was taking Dutch classes. But as I started growing, I realized that I was more interested into going to the United States. And I started telling my parents about that, and they were kind of like open to the idea, and they said, yeah, sure, of course. So I started looking into that, and I was like, what can I do? You know, what are things that I really like to do? And I realized that I didn't like econ at all. I didn't like econ, I didn't like law, and I was scared of science. So it took me some time, guys. I was so confused about things that I wanted to do, because I'm someone who kind of like have a lot of interest, and it felt really defeating to not know exactly what I wanted to do, you know? Some people were always like, I'm gonna go to med school. Some people were always like, I'm gonna do this and that. And I was there and I was like, I don't know. Because everything felt really interesting that I didn't know exactly which path to take. So I started looking into like marketing. I started looking into econ, even though I didn't like it. I started looking into all of that. I was like, maybe if I do business management. It was a hurdle to figure out what I wanted to do. So I did what I knew best, and I started praying about it. And over time, I realized that I was kind of like interested into the healthcare world. And mind you, that was, I think, my last year of high school, or the year before. That's when I was kind of like leaning into healthcare, but it was too late for me to change my path from econ to science. So what I did is that I stayed at econ major in high school, but I took the hardest math classes possible. Remember, I told you I hated math, and I still do. But my math teacher was like the best. It was like an angel. I still talk to him up until this day. It's like the best teacher I've ever had in my life. He believed in me when I told him like how confused I was. He believed in me from the very first day, and he always encouraged me. My biology teacher as well. As I got into like the last years of of high school, it was always encouraging me. I remember my physics teacher told me that with your grade, I don't know why you hope you're gonna be a doctor. And I remember that day I went to the school's bathroom and I cried. Bruh, I was like, why would you say that to a child? Like, I was literally 16. You know, I know life is not perfect, but you can't crush me like that, you know? So, but anyways, my math teacher was very supportive and helped me, and for the first time in my entire life during that last year of high school, and I think the year before, I didn't have to retake any math exams. Like, everything went well. I did well on all my exams, and my grades were finally good in math and in biology and somewhat in physics. Anyways, when I moved and got to the United States, I was trying to figure out the system. So I started out being undecided major, but I kind of knew that I wanted to go on the pre-med route. But you know, I was just trying to figure out everything. So I went back and decided to major in biology, general biology, and then changed to biochemistry, and then realized and remembered how bad or just how much I hate chemistry. So I went from general bio to biochemistry to cell bio. Regular bio classes worked fine on me, like it was great. Like, you know, I handled it well, and I was kind of enjoying it. Like, I enjoyed my cell bio class, I enjoyed my biology class. Like, you know, biology classes were fine. It was challenging, of course, but you know, it helped me to realize why I actually liked it and why I was kind of interested into like the healthcare path. But if I had to do something differently, I might not have majored in cell bio, but that's a subject for another video. So anyways, going back to undergrad, so I majored in cell bio, and also I think during my it was my junior year, I started volunteering at a clinic not far from where I lived, and I was working with medical assistant and nurses, and it was a great experience to figure out if I actually liked it, and I did love working with all these medical assistants, the PAs, the nurses, and everything. So I was like, yeah, this might be something I like. But down the line, after graduation, the very day after graduation, I started working as a medical assistant, and it was it was new. It was very interesting to figure out, to get to know doctors and everything. But something that really pissed me off is how miserable doctors actually were. I feel like the happiest people in the healthcare field when I was working were actually like the PAs and the nurses. Like all the doctors, all the physicians were, why am I here? And I was like, yeah, why are you here? And most of them were so miserable. They were like, when you ask them, would you do it all over again? They were like, no, I would never do med school over again. And I'm like, bro, then why do you keep doing it? So it really put things in perspective for me, and I was like, do I really want to be a doctor? Because being a doctor in the States seems like suicide, literally. And I was also looking into people in residency, sharing the different suicide rates in residency for medical students and how people were depressed and burned out, and I'm like, do I really want to do that? Is it really? But I realized that I actually did. I think God really did his thing when he convinced me this would be one of the best paths for me. But he also told me that I could do anything else, and I would still be great, because I have a lot of interest. I could be an engineer, I think, and I would still be fulfilled. But there's something about healthcare that it just drew me closer, right? So even though it was a little defeating to talk to these doctors, and they were like, yeah, nah, I wouldn't do this, and just you see how you deal with crappy doctors, and it makes you really rethink your life choices. That's how it was when I was a medical assistant. I'm like, bruh. What happened that was funny though is that after working because I worked as a medical assistant in 2 different places, in a small clinic and then in a bigger hospital. And after that first part of my experience at the small clinic, I realized that I still wanted to be a doctor, but I also wanted to like my life. So instead of thinking about stuff like surgery or really more competitive residencies, I started looking into things that would actually have the best work-life balance, and I started leaning towards being interested in peds. And I was like, yeah, peds is fine, you can still make it. I know it's primary care, and a lot of people don't respect primary care physician, and they don't make as much as surgeons, but it's still a respectable career path, and I kind of like it. So what I did was I started looking more into that, because I was still into medicine, but that's when the thing starts. So before graduating, I realized that I didn't know a lot about medicine in the United States. I thought that it was a little similar to medicine in Belgium, because like I mentioned, I was in the Belgian school in Congo. So I kind of I thought it would be similar, but it was not. So when I was in my 3rd year in college, I signed up to take the MCAT, because you gotta take the MCAT. It's like the admissions test, So I was like, yeah, let me take the MCAT. Little did I know, I didn't know much about the exam itself. So let's say that I had to take the MCAT once to realize that, I think a couple days before my test, I realized that I couldn't use a calculator. And I was like, what? Why? But yeah, that's in the rules, and I never knew that. And I feel like I didn't research a lot on the MCAT up until a couple days before my exam, which was my mistake, I blame myself for that, but still. And also I realized that for international students, which I am an international student, there's not a lot of med schools that are open to having you, and there's a lot more I know now that I wish I knew when I was still in undergrad, especially for programs that are BS, MD, the ones where you go to college and then as soon as you graduate you start medical school right away, those linkage programs. I didn't know about that. I wish I did. I didn't know. It was most of these were not open information. You know what I mean? It was not open information. It's things that you kind of like had to figure out by yourself. I don't know how, you know. So anyways, when I took MCAT the first time, I think it was in 2020, I didn't do well, but leave. And I was like, it's okay, I can do it again. So I did it again when I graduated, and again, I didn't do well. Surprising. And both times when I took the MCAT, the first time I was taking, I think it was during my final year, and I was taking really hard classes. I didn't know how to study. The second time I was working full-time, because as an international student you cannot take time off when you're done after school. You either have to work full-time or you have to enroll in another school program. So I was working full-time. My schedule would be like 8 to 5 at the clinic, and then 5:30 I'll be at the library. I was burnt out, and I understood why people were so burnt out in this like healthcare field. When I tell you I was tired, I didn't like life anymore. Like, I think I was very much depressed. And then I moved out from where I went from undergrad, and that's when I started working in the hospital, right? After when I started working as a medical assistant in the hospital I was working at. I thought that I would just chill for a couple months. I was thinking chill for a year and then start studying part-time for the MCAT again, you know? No burnout or anything. And then something happened at my work. So as an international student, you get a work permit that only lasts a year before you renew it. And apparently my job, they were not supposed to hire an international student, so they were not helpful when it was time to renew my work permit. And they were like, yeah, you have to resign. And as I mentioned earlier, as an international student, you cannot do nothing to stay legal in the United States. So you have to either work or study. So they told me that in January 2023, like that very first week of January, they were like, yeah, we can help you, so you're gonna have to go. And I was like, what? You know, what do you mean I have to go? And they were like, yeah, we can't help you. We don't have whatever you need to have your document renewed or whatever, so you have to resign. So I was like, that's not nice. So, well, I didn't have a choice, so I did resign. In January 2023, I got a mail. I know that was not in January. I think a couple months later, I got a mail saying that I had a deadline, and I knew I had a deadline because you have a deadline before you figure out what you want to do, whether it's studying or going back to work. And the deadline is 3 months. So you have 180 days. 3 months, 180 days. Yeah, I think you have between 90 and 180. I think it's 90 because it's not a long time. You have 3 months to either find a new job or find a new program to enroll at. So I didn't have a choice. I was applying for jobs, but I knew that I was not gonna get in because, again, my work permit was expired, and by the time I would get a job offer, it would probably like be too late, you know. So I had no other choice than to get enrolled into a master's program. That was in January 2023. So when I started looking at master's program, I was like, why do I not just look into like masters with linkage program to medical school and all that, which are very great options, by the way, because I was like, I still want to go to medical school, you know, like I want to go to medical school, so might as well look up a master's that can like get me the certainty that I will go to medical school. But then when I started thinking about what I really wanted from life, I realized that I had to figure out, why do I want to go in healthcare in the first place? Is it just to become a doctor? And if it's just to become a doctor, why? You know, because in January 2023, that's when I was working with some cardiologists, and when I tell you, most of them were like, I would never go into medical school again. I would never tell my child to go into medical school. Like, they were over their jobs. Like, they're getting good money, but if you talk to them, you realize that they're really over it. They're really not great to work with, always in a crappy mood, always tired. And I was like, do I really want that to be my life? You know? So I had to figure out what drew me into like healthcare in the first place when I was in high school. So I started like just looking into that. I was like, a master's in physiology, like most people do, or even anatomy, or you know, those biomedical masters, those are great options. But like, considering the fact that I'm an international student and I will have to work, will that open the best doors for me? And you know, the answer was no. And not because it's bad, and this is no shade to people who actually went through that path, but for me it wasn't the best option, because I realized that what drew me the most to the healthcare world was not only the clinical aspect of it, but also the ability to make changes into the system. So I was not only drawn into the fact of I want to be a doctor part, I was also drawn into the how can I make a change in the healthcare system. So I started looking into masters in like public health, you know, and I was looking at it, I was like researching, you know, going through it, like all the research and all that, and I realized it wasn't the best option for me. It just wasn't the best. And again, this is no shades. Okay, don't come for me. It's no shade to the people that are doing a master's in healthcare in public health, but again, it was just not for me. So what I did, I started looking into it more. So, and randomly one day I looked up masters, like I don't know how I got onto like masters of healthcare administration, or maybe it was when I was looking into getting an MBA, because I was like, business administration is like, you know, you always get it right, you know. When I was looking up masters in business administration, I somehow found out about healthcare administration. The more I read about it, the more I was like, this actually sounds interesting, because this really puts you in like places that actually make decisions and change that and impact the healthcare system. And that was like, oh, that was thrilling. I was like, that's interesting. So I started looking into that more, right? And as I'm looking into that more, I realized that I'm really interested into it. So I went on YouTube, because a lot of my research included, in addition of like Google search, it was like, what information do I have on YouTube about Masters of Healthcare Administration? And believe me when I say, when I was applying, so in January 2023, there wasn't a lot. Like, I went onto YouTube and I was like, day in the life of a graduate student, master in healthcare administration. And I think there was only like 2 or 3 channels talking about that. I was like, this is not good, because how am I supposed to make a decision if I don't have a lot of information? But even with the ones I actually saw on there, it made sense. So I decided to give it a shot, and I applied to multiple schools. Because the time I was applying to medical school, I applied to medical school twice and withdrew my application twice because of my MCAT scores, because I didn't do well the 2 times I took it. But I had almost everything ready. I had my personal statement ready. I had everything, like, you know, letter of recommendation. I literally, when I applied, it was really easy peasy, you know. And I started receiving acceptances. Then I picked my school, which was like my dream medical school. Crazy, because the school I'm going at right now is my dream medical school, but I'm here doing my master's in healthcare administration. Maybe it's a full circle moment, but anyways. And a lot of people in healthcare admin, they like the healthcare world, and a lot of people in my cohort, they also were pre-med, but then switched to healthcare administration with no intention of going back to pre-med, like to pre-med or even think about medical school. I don't think like that, because I feel like whatever we learn is really helpful for medical school. So I'm kind of like still into medical school, like, you know, getting into medical school. So, and it's true that most of our classes are really like public health heavy, but I feel like public health and healthcare, they go together, you know? Yeah, so after researching, getting into my dream program, it really, like, the experiences that I'm getting in my master's really make me even more excited to apply to medical school. And I just need to find the time to study for the MCAT again. But by the time I'm done with my master's, I know it will open up more doors for me, especially on the administrative side of healthcare, than having like master's would, especially for me as an international student. Like, the work place or the job market is already very saturated. Like the people that are privileged are American citizens, so you kind of have to differentiate yourself, right? Especially when you're not an American citizen like I am. Yeah, so I think if I could sum it up, I would say that just the opportunities that healthcare administration offer worked better for me. I think it just convinced me more than any other path. And also the experiences I'm learning and everything I'm learning really reinforced my desire to go to medical school, because everything is connected, guys, and I love it. And also I know that the job market, and I think that's similar to the first one, I just know that the jobs I can apply to are like, there's a greater number. I can go in healthcare consulting, I can go in hospital operations, I can go, you know, it's broader and it gives me more chances to kind of like figure out what I really like, what I lean more into while I'm still getting ready to go to medical school. So yeah, so now let me just do my lips. That's my quick look, guys. I'm just gonna add some my powder here, Fit Me powder, and then I'm gonna do my lips. And I'm also adding some mascara. I'm just gonna have this on my lips. Guys, sorry, my camera just died, but yes, that was the end of me talking about why I decided to go into the healthcare administration route. And I really want to encourage anyone that is thinking about grad school, just try to figure out why you want to do it and also how it can help you level up, because you need a good job, you need to have work-life balance, and when choosing a degree you kind of need to figure out which one will open the most doors. And it is true that as a Christian, I know that God can give you more favor than a degree can ever, but still, a master's degree in the United States is not cheap. You have to have a good return on investment when it comes to your studies, especially when you spend a lot. As an international student, I cannot take loans here in the States. Some scholarships are not available for me, so doing a master's or any type of education here is really expensive. So you have to make sure that you can actually gain it back over time, you know? So I think the Masters of Healthcare Administration was the best choice for me, and as I'm starting my like second year, I love it. I love all of my classes that I've had, even the challenging one. They really helped me to have a better understanding on all the things that kind of like happen in the healthcare world. And yeah, so if you have more questions, please feel free to DM me, always ask me on my socials. I'll be happy to help in any way I can. And I know most people go into healthcare administration just to not go back into the pre-med cycle or pre-med route. I still am on the pre-med route, so if you have questions about that as well, please let me know in the comments, and I can always like do my best to help you out and to answer your questions. So yes, that was it, and this is the final look. I'm just gonna change my shirt and get going. So yes, so guys, I will see you in the next video.